see you. Let's welcome Carmen Lee. She's an assistant professor from Chinese University of Hong Kong in the English department. And she has a new book coming out, Language Online, which I believe is being released today, and an official release at 6 p.m. or 6:30? 6:30 p.m. tonight. So don't forget about that event. Also, today she's going to be talking about internet language, short forms, LOL. Let's welcome her.
First of all, I'd like to thank Rodney, yourself, and Alice for inviting me all the way from Shanxi to come talk. Let me start by showing you some text, okay? I guess you know what they or mean literally. You can read them. Some people, okay, for your convenience, like people can see you again. But they're actually found in offline spaces. They're not text messages or chat messages, okay? So the first one, for your convenience, was actually found in London. That's the name of the convenience store. Make people drink, okay? That was found in New Zealand, okay? That's a sign on their wine account on shelf, okay? See you again is actually part of the sign at the exit of a shopping mall in Hong Kong. APM is the name of the shopping mall in Kwun Tong. I guess some of you know already. So the first point to note about these is that these are found in public spaces in Hong Kong. Not in Hong Kong, around the world, okay? In public spaces, mostly in commercial areas, shopping areas, in big cities. The second thing that I'd like to talk about is the language use, okay? These signs, these public texts, if you like. So the first one, for the convenience, okay? Make use of strategies like number and letter homophones, okay? So using similar sounding letters or numbers to represent an existing word. Think before you break, okay. Also word reduction, letter number homophones. See you again, ask again. Okay, the use of the you or the pronoun you has at sign. Okay, which I guess comes from you and So these forms of language, okay, are typically set to be features of language that's found on the internet, okay, or in the online world. But obviously they've moved to the offline off-screen settings. So what I'm mainly interested in today is to look at this interaction between language practices that used to be online only, okay, and the use of this kind of linguistic practices in offline spaces. Note that my use of online and offline, it's a very casual, broad one. Okay, so by online, I only mean internet-mediated text. Okay, offline means they're not immediately internet-mediated. And I dare not define discourse at this point because it can be anything. Okay, so I'll leave that to Jim tomorrow. Okay, so. Over the past, I think, 10, 15 years or so, okay, there has been increasing public debate, okay, on mass media discourse associated with certain kinds of linguistic features that are often found in online communication, okay, such as word reduction and other stylized forms of spelling that are commonly used in texting and chatting. And these public discourses often lead to moral panics, okay, which are centered around how the language adopted by young people or teenagers in their online communication may negatively affect their literacy skills. Okay, things like they can't spell, they can't use good grammar, they're illiterate basically. Okay, and as a result, lots of labels have been given to such language forms like text tease, text speak, and chat speak, and so on. On the other hand, okay, language and literacy researchers have also provided a number of labels or descriptors, okay, for online language. David Crystal's NetSpeak, I guess most of you are quite familiar with. Okay, so he is actually referring to a sort of genre, okay, of writing which is specific to internet communication, with features such as abbreviations, emoticons, and so on. Susan Herring, okay, who developed the computer mediated discourse analysis framework, okay, and in this framework, CMDA, she analyzes CMD at the structural, meaning, interactional, and social levels. And later on, quite recently, okay, she also proposed e-grammar. Basically, I think it's an alternative to NetSpeak, okay, which starts from the micro level of orthography, typography, to the level of morphology and syntax at the utterance level. And in literacy research, okay, there are often discourses about such language use as creative practices. Okay? I guess Guy have written an article about chat rooms language as creative conversations quite early on. This is actually what I've been interested in. And also, Ian Blomlett recently, okay, as part of his super diversity framework, okay, he actually suggests that texting codes have been developed into a sort of vernacular, right, which are semiotic forms that circulate in networks driven by new technologies such as the internet. So far, okay, the majority of my research has been interested in this broader area of online communication, online language and literacy practices. So like most of these existing studies, my focus has been on the online world only. But these examples we've seen in the beginning, okay, do suggest that these forms of language are actually being recognized or embraced, okay, in public spaces. So my study, okay, is concerned with these three questions, okay. So what are the features, what traces of online language features can be found in offline public sphere? Okay, so my first step is to identify what sort of NetSpeak features are commonly found in public spaces, and what do they mean? Okay, when they're taken to offline spaces, okay, what sort of symbolic or lexical meanings or social meanings they have? Do the text users or readers actually care when they see such language forms in public spaces? So that's why I've done some interviews with reader of these texts on the spot where these texts are from. My understanding of public text is actually inspired or informed by linguistic landscape research. Okay, so I've drawn upon concepts from linguistic landscape research. Basically, it's concerned with language in its written form in the public spaces, okay, public sphere. And by public spaces, okay, they are actually concerned with language forms in public road signs, advertising billboards, street names, place names, commercial shop signs, and public signs on government buildings. And by extension, okay, some researchers have started to look at other publicly available texts like T-shirts, magazines, and even graffiti. Most of linguistic landscape research has been interested in commercial areas, okay? And these areas are found to be quite rich in linguistic zones too, in cities. And these studies have been interested in issues of language choice, multilingualism, the coexistence of the roles of different languages at the same time, or in different areas. So here I'd like to see the internet also as an important site or an important linguistic landscape with a wide range of publicly available texts that can travel back and forth between the online and the offline landscapes. And these online texts may also be discursively reconstructed when they flow to offline spaces. This morning, just now, Ilana talked about practices, okay, so I won't say too much about it here, okay, but my understanding of these texts, they are also grounded in some related disciplines, okay, in literacy practices, neoliteracy studies, and this course is in place, of course, okay, by Scullin, who points out that the locations where public texts appear are crucial in understanding their symbolic meanings. entities that they index. And the scholars also point out that the language used on the site may or may not be a hint to language used in a particular space. For example, if you find English in Starbucks in mainland China, okay, it does not necessarily index the group of English speakers there. Okay? So it simply has the symbolic meaning of being globalized or westernized and so on. And in literacy studies, of course, practices are seen as situated, and that actually allows me to understand meanings of how many the meanings of these linguistic forms change or vary from context to context. Linguistic landscape research in Hong Kong. Okay, so linguistic landscape research has been carried out in many cities around the world, including Asia, actually, like Bangkok, Tokyo, Taipei, and Korea. In Hong Kong, it's not quite studied. Very few studies have been done in Hong Kong, such as Zavalsky and Young, who have looked at the semiotic meanings of names of addresses and residential buildings. Binzo has looked at shop signs, along Queen's Road in Hong Kong, and Lai is actually a comprehensive study of 4 public spaces in Hong Kong, including business and residential areas. Most of these studies are concerned with the role of various languages, like the coexistence of Cantonese and Mandarin, traditional British simplified scripts in Chinese, alongside English, mainly in shopping areas. So in my study, I have actually followed the tradition of linguistic landscape research by collecting photographs, by taking photographs of signs or evidence or traces of such internet-specific language in public spaces in Hong Kong. I've also uploaded and archived these photos onto Flickr just for easy access by me and by my RAs. And to understand the viewer's interpretation, what do they mean to the actual readers, I've actually interviewed 20 people on the spot. Okay, they're actually my RS friends. Okay, a few of them were actually positive guys, but most of them are actually through convenience sampling. And we mainly asked them, what to talk about their understanding of these signs or language use of signs, and whether they have actually used these forms in other contexts. So that's our project website on Flickr. Okay, it's useful because Flickr allows you to organize your photos into sets. So by doing that, you're actually starting to code your data already. So you give tags to them, you organize them in different sets, like themes and features and language. That's also curation. Okay, so just a bit of numbers. Okay, so far it's ongoing, the study. Okay, so far we've collected 243 photos around Hong Kong. We've tried to organize them according broadly, into categories of private business. Okay, so most of them are actually of commercial or private or business nature. Okay, including ads, shop names, and signs, and so on. Very interesting, a small number of them are actually official or institutional. Okay, that actually doesn't add up to 43. Okay, there are actually a number of mobile texture. What I mean by that, they're actually on the move. They're not static. Okay, in one location, like T-shirts. Okay, so if I see a student walking on campus with a T-shirt with LOL on it, okay, we call that mobile. Okay, there are ads on vehicles, on cars, and public transport, like buses and so on. Now, among the data, very interestingly, a large number of the linguistic signs contain the email ads. Okay, I'll show you some data for each of these categories. And also 12% of them contain the Facebook like, 13% contain homophones, letter number homophones, well, I'll say a little bit more about it later on when I show the data, whether this is actually from the internet or not. Also categorize my data into by languages. Okay, so 41% English only. Okay, 49% bilingual mixed with Cantonese. But most of these features are indeed English-based, as you can see. So what I'm going to do now is just to show you some data, okay, some photographs, and then I'll try to explain what all these actually mean. So first of all, letter number homophones, the use of similar sounding letters and numbers to represent existing words. Okay. Now this is actually from Yamate. That's the name of the shop. Okay, Miss You. I can't quite work out why it's called Miss You. Okay. So it's along Nathan Road. It's on a very busy street.
Miss University.
Anyway, or it's Miss You. I don't know. Okay, so I just sort of noted this. Okay. So lots of found in commercial spaces like shops like this. Okay. Lots found in pop culture actually. Okay, like the CD covers of some pop singers. Okay, so this is Looking For Myself, okay, by Usher, and Come to Me. That's a local, see a singer, local pop singer, local. Okay, so this one is interesting. Okay, Why You Know Have to that. Okay, do you know the Why You Know meme? Okay, so Why You Know is not just about the use of letter homophones. Okay, Why You Know is actually a popular meme on the internet. Now, this was found on a minibus in Hong Kong. Okay, I think this was by an advertising company who actually rents this space for ads. Okay, so Why You Know originally comes from this. Okay, so this is the Why You Know meme. Usually, it was first posted on Tumblr. Okay, featuring this Why You Know guy with a very disgusted, frustrated expression. Okay, it's also accompanied by the Why You Know construction. Okay, usually written in the so-called broken English, okay, to draw people's attention to various issues. So it's very interesting that it's found on a minibus in Hong Kong. Oops. What happened? Okay. Sorry, I still have to start. I think sometimes with too many images, it just stops. Okay. It will come back. Sorry. Why you know connection. Okay. All right. That's the reason why I don't choose. Okay. Now, here's another U. Okay, it's quite a typical construction that you found on T-shirts and spaces. So get a heart shoe here. Okay, so that's one of their posters around Easter. Okay, and then I saw that one of Victoria's slides yesterday, Roxy Heart. Either. Okay, so that's found in TST. Okay, now the origin of heart, maybe you can actually help me here. Okay, I think it may not be internet referential, but then it's actually popularized by many internet spaces. Okay, with the heart shape and X heart something construction. So actually, this construction, okay, that have many origins. Okay, if you're interested, it was originally found. It can be traced back to as early as 7th century. Okay, this is actually this resembles the shape of the plant Silvium, actually. Okay, which was believed to have contraceptive use. Okay, and that's why it was related to sex or romantic love. Okay, so that's one of the many origins. Okay, and another reason for using this to represent love is that simply that a human heart looks too unromantic. So another origin. Whatever it is, okay. There are new uses of the heart shape actually. So the OED actually updated its entry of heart in 2011, And it says the new sense energy heart, verb, heart as a verb, like heart you, okay? In this subject, maybe the first English used to develop via the medium of t-shirts and bumper stickers. It originated as a humorous reference to logos featuring a picture of a heart as a symbol for the verb love, like that of the famous I Heart New York tourism campaign. So that's probably why you find the heart shape in many ads and many public spaces too. So that's actually that heart shape. Okay, so that's found on the poster of local bakery ads for Father's Day cakes. Okay. Now, for those of you who actually stay in Shatin, this literally means I heart Shatin. Okay. Now, this is a very interesting bilingual example of this construction. Okay. So on the internet, okay, it's common in the sense that it's actually the heart shape is actually formed by combining the less than sign, okay, plus 3. Okay. So I guess that's why it's popularized in public spaces too. And that leads to, of course, emoticons in public spaces. Now, there are many origins, again, for emoticons, okay? But it was first online, okay, in 1982, to signal a joke. The message is a joke, okay? Although the smiling faces existed before that, okay, as early as the early 60s, or in New York. And a recent study by Dresden and Herring suggests that emoticons are not just used to express emotions. They indeed serve a range of pragmatic functions and speech acts and even have illusionary forces to indicate intention of the speaker. And in public spaces, okay, emoticons are often found independently. Okay, so this is a good mobile example, okay, of such text. Okay, this is a car plate. How many people like doing that? Okay, personalizing their car plates. This is actually an Asian emoticon, so you don't have to read it until the end. Okay. It's found on shopping bags. Okay, so this Fortress electronic store. Okay, this is actually accompanied by able text too. On T-shirts. Okay. This is another Asian emoticon. This boy is actually very cooperative. Okay, with my Ari asking, oh, can I take a picture of your T-shirt? Okay, he actually posed for us. Okay, so that was found in Chinese restaurants. It's interesting that these emoticons are also starting to appear in the form of handwriting. Okay, so this was found in my university's cafe. Okay, so it's this big notice board for people to write whatever messages they like. Okay, so often you find people add a little emoticon besides their messages. Okay, and these emoticons actually resemble the punctuation marks too. Okay, by with the eagle signs and I don't know how do you call that, inverted V. Okay, this is actually an emoji on your smartphones. If you know what emojis are, so graphic emoticons that looks like this. Okay? So that's pretty interesting too. And okay, so these were obviously internet referential, but there are features, okay, that are not quite documented as NetSpeak, okay, but certainly they have origins of the internet. So especially the @ sign. There have been many origins of @ sign in offline uses, for example, as the accounting symbol at the rate of, okay, and also it's also found on typewriters, of course, okay, as early as 1880. But the first email use of the @ sign actually started in 1972 by Ray Tomlinson. Quite recently, okay, Honeycutt and Herring have already identified many uses of the @ sign on Twitter. Those of you who are on Twitter can confirm this, okay? So you can add the @ to address someone, to refer to another user, as part of an emoticon, and to replace the locational preposition @ okay, or simply a non-locational preposition @ like at the same time. in offline users, okay, the ads is actually locational mainly, okay, as we've seen at the beginning. See again ads ABM. Festival Walk where you had dinner last night, okay. So BBS is a bank at Festival Walk. Okay, so mainly to use to point to on location of the shopping center. So there are many fine shopping centers actually around Hong Kong. Mobile example, study abroad at CHK. Okay. But it's CHK's Chinese University of Hong Kong. CTU is CTU. Okay. Which is better actually. So a Chinese view, okay, our library calls itself My Library 2.0 at CHK. My department, English at CHK, okay? So it's all printed on our notepads, and letterheads and so on, okay? So it's very interesting to see, to find these in more institutional, official context, right? Okay. Oh, of course, okay. Yes, what is this? Okay, I think this was taken in the covered walkway, yeah, from between the university and the station, yeah, and Festival Walk. So discovering the at CTU. I think this at has been stylized. It's quite different from
second.
okay. I think just now Imada talked about we are living in a world of liking. Okay, so loads of examples, at least in Hong Kong, not sure about other parts of the world, okay? Many ads, public signs or notices, you find the Facebook like, okay, as part of the message. Now, are you on Facebook? I'll explain what Facebook like is, okay? So Facebook like is basically a button on Facebook for you to express some positive opinion, okay, or feeling towards a post, okay? So that's the original idea. Of course, there are many, many other functions of Facebook like, okay? You know, you can either click like to express positive stance, or you want to leave a comment, okay? To express interest in the post, to show support to the content poster, to agree with the poster, to simply say yes to a question that's raised in the post. Or, like most of my students would do, just like by showing that they've read it. Okay, maybe they haven't quite read it actually. Just to say that they've seen my post because I've put my course on.
Also to get someone to like your thing.
That's true.
Get more likes, you gotta like to get likes.
Yeah, people do collect likes now actually.
I
So yeah, it's not just about liking something. So the literal meaning is not there anymore. Okay. Now this is a very interesting category in the sense that like is an existing word already. It's a verb. Okay. That's been taken to the Facebook context, and the people have given it new meanings, right? And then now they're taken back to the off-screen settings. Okay, like this one. Okay, this is Nokia ad, okay, as part of the it's Chinese message, okay, so it literally means success is about sharing with the world and get numerous likes, whatever it means, okay. Like Dixon, okay, so this is an ad of the fitness center in Hong Kong. What's interesting here about the like is that it's not just referring to the Facebook like. Like here is actually part of the syntax of this message, yeah, like this, so it's to be read as this, okay? So it's not just about marketing, okay, strategy, this poster. So it also asks people to click like to become a fan of the fitness center too. So, okay, so, and although the Chinese equivalent to like is available on Facebook, which sounds strange to me actually. The poster designer, however, decided to use the English like here, okay, and form a mixed code message, okay, probably to speak to the local Hong Kong audience who is more used to code switching. Now, like may also be found in more institutional, educational context, okay. Now, this slogan, 水果才是 like fruit with like, okay, is actually part of the government's Eat Smart campaign, okay? So let's like fruit, let's eat more fruit, okay? This is actually a banner hung outside the school, okay, a primary school in Hong Kong. So these uses of the verb like, okay, were never quite found in pre-Facebook era, say. So now we have also interviewed some people, okay, who have seen this sign, okay, or we have asked them questions about, what's their understanding of these signs, I mean, do they actually care? Now, most of the people we've interviewed could immediately identify some symbolic meanings of these uses, okay? Like they're trying to be cool, okay, when they add sign in this ad. It makes the ad look more youthful and fun, okay? That's on the use of the heart shape. It's cute and effective, okay, by using emoticons and when to swap. Okay, these are all quite positive. Now, some people don't quite care, actually, okay, or they think that's not quite right, okay, to see these off-screen settings, okay. It doesn't look right putting this @ sign on that. It's only for the internet. It's not a real English word, okay. Note that this is an older person, thank you, okay, who is not always online, okay. I don't know if there's a correlation, okay, because I'm only interviewed 20. Use of you in this ad makes it look lazy and unattractive. It would be nicer if they wrote YOU with 3 letters. Not very important, I can afford to visit, okay? So this is another use, the addition of an emoticon in an ad. So quite divided opinions on the use of these. So, but we are actually seeing, maybe, as I think some of you already raised yesterday, the commodification of internet language in public spaces. So how do we make sense of all these? Okay, what do they actually mean? Okay, so what? Okay, what happens when such language features are found in offline off-screen contexts? Now, the linguist, David Crystal, probably didn't see this coming when he said this in 2005. He said, SMS abbreviations were designed to suit a medium where there is technological limits on what can be communicated. They have no place in a medium where such limitations do not exist. That's not quite right, okay? Because, well, for obvious reasons, right, okay? Because, first of all, these abbreviations are still in use, okay, even if such limits no longer exist. On smartphone, you can send very long messages already, right? And, of course, you are seeing these in offline spaces, like, things I've shown you earlier, and, where such limits always exist. So I think the growing presence of online forms of language in public places is a clear sign or clear case of public enregisterment of language. Basically, enregisterment refers to the process through which a language becomes a recognized or socially recognized variety or register of language. And with technologies becoming much easier and relatively cheap to use for people, they're engaging in more forms of online communication and online writing. And as they do more of that, I think, they are starting to accept such features of language as normal, say. And some frequently used abbreviated forms, such as LOL, OMG, BFF, best friend forever, and are added to the dictionary that is codified already, which suggests how commonplace these forms have become. And as we've seen already from the interviews, of course, these forms of language have been given, have been commodified, okay, have been given index points and symbolic values, and they're used in offline spaces, okay? So maybe the designers of these public texts wish to index certain groups of readers, like the use of heart-shaped texting language, which may speak to the younger group of shoppers, internet users, okay? And when they mix English text with Chinese, they want to point to or index a certain group of local readers too. But to the users, as we saw in the interview data, they are mostly symbolic, okay? So, that's why many viewers took these examples as having additional meanings of being cool or being beautiful, and so on. And some even call it meaningless, okay? Now let me try to make a connection to education. Okay, I guess some of you have seen this before. Okay, in 2008, the London Grid for Learning actually printed 5,000 copies of this poster, which is entitled "Top Tips for Pupils Safe Serving at Home and at School." Now, these 9 tips were all written in texting language, simple texting language. What's going on here, maybe, we're seeing how these linguistic practices that used to be considered as harming young people have become more valued in institutional or educational settings. Okay? Now, this is quite debatable, of course. Okay? And it's also relates back to my earlier point about moral panics. Okay? So the moral panic of whether text speak is a threat to language and grammar. It's interesting here because this poster is revealing some kind of a new way of authorities exercising power over students. Okay? So I'd like to end the talk, okay, with this, and to maybe open up some discussion space. Okay. So what we're seeing, it seems, okay, it's sort of breakdown of this online and offline dichotomy. I think this theme, interestingly, actually came up in quite a few of the talks yesterday. Guy showed us cake mixing, okay, how physical cake mixing happens together with the virtual cake mixing, okay. And then I think Victoria was talking about living in instead of living with technologies, and of course Rodney was talking about how to digitize the human body, and even creation, okay, so how technologies are transforming our physical version experience. So maybe I'll just end with this quote, okay, by Wellman. Okay, so this is not a new debate actually. This has been there for a while, okay, especially in understanding social network and identities. Okay, so Wellman says the cyberspace-physical space comparison is a forced dichotomy. Many ties actually operate in both cyberspace and physical space, which do not just exist offline. Thank you very much.
We'll open up to questions for either last presenters.
My question is for Carmen. Just had a quick question. Could you just talk a little bit more about why you think the internet has popularized the heart symbol? Because one would argue that the New York government popularized it with the I Heart New York
I really needed your input here.
campaign in 1977. So I mean, it predates the internet as such. But
yeah.
could you just explain
I'm
why?
very aware of the fact that it's been there for a while, of course, okay, as I said already. But well, it's basically based on my observations of my own use of the internet, of texting. I've observed my students' Facebook pages, and they do use the heart-shaped construction quite regularly.
Yeah.
So
But again,
it's
I
really,
don't think, I'm not arguing that it's not popular now,
Yeah.
or that people don't use it now on the internet. My argument is
it's
that
better than
it's been popularized by a campaign that
yeah, New
occurred
York.
offline.
Yeah.
And I just maybe you should think about that, because it seems to be very important to your argument about how these
Yeah.
symbols are used in so-called physical public spaces.
Yeah.
Because it was sort of invented in
That's
such a space.
I don't agree with that because that was in New York. Carmen was talking about popularization in this part of the world, in Hong Kong, among Hong Kong youngsters.
No, but I'm just saying, one could argue that it's become a popular icon as a
Yeah,
result of
it's
it.
a popular icon and then pop culture circulates through this part of the
It's
world.
certainly debatable, okay?
Something happened, a campaign happened in New York doesn't mean that kids here should already be familiarized with that. And so Carmen's point is still valid that internet in this part of the world has popularized it among youngsters in this part of the world.
Okay.
I think you are both correct in some ways. We can further discussion. Actually, I'm not too sure about heart shape. Okay, that's what I can say. Okay, but I have observed that on the internet it has been used quite widely in a different way.
I just wanted to say, I'm not sure that Davy Crystal deserves such a big cross.
Okay, I'll make it smaller next time.
He doesn't need me to defend him. It's just in the sense that I think, I mean, obviously he's wrong, they didn't die out, but the economy is involved somewhere in the. So I mean, but what you have is something that was sort of created for a particular purpose, which was economy. And most abbreviation must be about economy in some sense or another, but then it takes on some new meaning. So the interest, and I guess that's something about is that overdetermination of science or whatever that science don't just have one purpose, they have many purposes. So I think the interesting thing that you're raising now is really like how the new meanings that they're taking on functions.
I think when we think about this so-called the next speed, it is instructive to go back to personal letters of the 18th century, 19th century, and particularly things like business memos, where you see this, I mean, huge amount of abbreviation and symbols and that sort of thing, even more than what you see online. First point. The second point is that I mean, I found that City of London thing, I found something very, very offensive about it, first of all. This kind of appropriation of youth language by authorities, I found it something. But more than that, I found it really old-fashioned. Really pre-iPhone. Really pre-iPhone. And so one thing that we need to think about is, you know, the relationship between these kinds of forms and the reality of input. And so, I mean, it used to be that people use those forms, there was a kind of very materialistic reason because it's easy to type. Now, your phone already, you know, does the automatic word completion, and so now you still see those forms, but there's a kind of intentionality where you don't have to use that form. In fact, it's more work to use the form now because your iPhone is going to try to complete the word for you, and you have to go around and say, no, I actually want to do text here. So I mean, I think that's important.
Your first point about NetSpeak or short forms or any forms, any kind of deviation of creating forms of language. Of course, they existed before the internet age. I agree with that. Okay, but this is all based on my observation and interpretation in recent years. I think they're really growing in public spaces. Okay, it didn't quite exist before. That's why I decided to take pictures of these. Okay, and they kept appearing. The second point about that poster, you're quite right. It didn't quite work. Okay, they have actually they also printed the full form. Okay, so the translation form, the translated form of those tips. Okay. And I think at that time it actually generated much public debate, you know, about whether it works, whether you like it, you know, parents actually hated it, okay? So yeah, actually the kids said that, why are you doing this? Yeah, so it's sort of a new kind of power relations, you know, how you try to get closer to the kids, and it really didn't work out. Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking another thing you can connect to here seems to be advertising discourse.
Yeah.
Because the use of foreign languages that are, you know, considered trendy. I remember a time in New Zealand when you used to see a lot of French in advertisements that was there to make it look cool and hip and sell the product. It seems to me that a lot of the text that you comment on
it's one of the strategies, right? Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's quite interdisciplinary. I think this one I think a lot to reach.
The other thing it relates to as well of interest is the aesthetics and architecture. I'm fascinated by universities about how they rebrand libraries as hubs and nodes and I don't know if this is a kind of internet type building that kind of feels a bit more.
We're a hub.
I very much agree with this kind of, in a sense, a collapse between the online and the offline. And that, lots of things seem to point in that direction. But then things do change when they go online. So the hashtag, I think, is a really interesting phenomenon because actually I'm not 100% sure of its origins, but I think it's used as a sort of numbering device originally on typewriter keyboards or something like that. And it's taken on a whole new significance in Twitter, which is actually user-driven. That's the history of the hashtag. And now it's been adopted by Instagram. So, and probably other sites as well. So as it goes online, it changes its meaning. And then presumably when it comes offline, it will change its meaning. I haven't seen examples of that, but
Hashtag.
yeah.
I probably said it in my university, one of the posters, the hashtag there really doesn't mean much.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's sort of aesthetic,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah. So it's sort of points really like looking cool or
Yeah.
something. Yeah. Not too sure.
Do you have any, have you considered or have you noticed any sort of Hong Kong specific features in this? I mean, my personal observation is that Hong Kong people like to abbreviate and use acronyms more than other people.
Really? In Cantonese and in Chinese, yeah. I haven't done the comparative study, of course, okay? What I can say is, well, I haven't traveled too widely, but I do notice that the use of like, for example, the Facebook like, it's quite common here simply because the large number of people using Facebook. So maybe, you can tell me what happens in your country too.
Carmen, I would like to give you the angle of register analysis.
In register.
Because we talk about the super vernacular. The important point is vernacular. So you see the branding of the online offline precisely in those domains, so-called low domains, register, which is
It's very-
vernacular
It's
register.
very hard for me on the one hand.
But then you have this library. You have the library, then it's more formal. I mean, if we can start to see the appearance of this kind of language in more formal registers, like in our dissertation, in our paper, in our assignment, or in formal notices, then it's a
So
breakthrough.
maybe it's hybrid discourse that we're talking
Yeah,
about.
it's
Right?
registered.
Make sure academic and so on private register. Yeah. It's situated, I would say. Okay.
I really like that primary school banner.
So you watch it.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's really like it's a common thing for Hong Kong education department or abroad to use this kind of language. Those
Yeah,
thing and then trying to be cool. What is it?
Yeah,
Trying to be cool.
yeah.
And the school context that they seems to like legitimize
Doesn't work.
this mix of language, but in
It's
to
wrong.
examinations. I mean,
Exactly.
there's a really
Yeah.
strong. I mean, I was.
So I was just talking to Phil yesterday that the word iPad and an iPhone appeared in in Chinese public examinations in their compositions, and then the exam authority was actually complaining about people mixing in words like this. Okay, but the kids like, how else can we say that? I was really talking about iPhone, not any smartphone. Okay, so yeah, there is this very interesting dynamic.
Brian? I have a question related to Ilana's stuff.
The flow a little bit, but I would like to go back to the idea about curation, if I could. I'm really interested in this concept of curation online, and because I guess there's that big question of expertness and curation, and it's of course a burning issue right now with Wikipedia, where people are starting to question whether who should be writing on Wikipedia, who's expert enough, and what does that mean? And it seems to me that there's a lot of curation going on with Wikipedia as well. It's just not being called that necessarily. Maybe it is.
Oh, it is.
It is. Yeah, because recently we did on a course here, we did an assignment where students wrote Wikipedia articles, and it stirred up some controversy here and there, in that sense of, should we be doing this at all? And so my question is, this issue of curation online, who qualifies as somebody who should be doing this? Have you been engaging with that?
As I should have said at the beginning, I've just started to engage with these ideas and to begin thinking about it. It's one of the ideas that was discussed briefly yesterday was the discourse of the democratization of information and access access and everything else that's always been associated with the internet, and it's Berners-Lee's kind of dictum right from day one that was his purpose. One of his purposes to make stuff freely available. And that kind of has a whole discourse about it, so that everybody should have a say, everybody is equal, everybody has the right to say something, to value something, to provide a judgment. But is that what we're going to be happy with? And this is the big issue, and I'm not quite sure what I think. I mean, as I've said, within the field of curation in art and museums and galleries, there's been a whole kind of postmodern move in that field about curatorship, and curators have been given more status than ever in that field, and they've assumed this kind of creative kind of role. I'm not sure. I mean, I think this is what I'd like other people to talk about. I mean, I've said what I think, so what do you think? Alice?
When we're talking about curation, because the first thing that comes to my mind was the word taste. And because that's such an online curation that people enslave certain tastes to it. I just wonder if you have to transfer that to education. What would it be like? I mean, I'm just throwing an example.
Well, I was giving someone an example of how I experience curation every day. I subscribe to a left-wing liberal kind of magazine in Australia called The Monthly, which is based on The New Yorker. Now, I pay for my subscription, but as a result of paying for my subscription, every day I receive from The Monthly a curated online, I don't know what to call it, an email, from the Monthly called Shortcuts. Now, that Shortcuts curates every day 5 articles from places like The New Yorker, The Guardian, The Atlantic, places around the world that it thinks that people who subscribe to The Monthly would like to read. So they've done a hell of a lot of research on that curatorship, and they've kind of got a sense of their audience and what their audience's taste is like, and what their likes and dislikes are. And it's also, what's so interesting about it is, it's amazing how often I would read, I think on average at least 1 or 2, skim, I don't read anything anymore, but I'd skim a couple of those, and the joy every day of these Shortcuts that's curated for me is they always end with images from somewhere. And those images are often just always things that I would never have had access to otherwise. And they're amazing, the sources of those images. So I really look forward to, in particular, the images that I receive daily. And that's almost like the first place I go. I go down to the bottom to see the images. Now, they've said, The Monthly is saying something about the taste of the small group. It's probably only got a subscription of 25,000 people in Australia. They've assumed something about the taste of the people who subscribe to this journal, and they're curating stuff for me every day, and I love it. I love it. And that's actually how I got interested in, one of the ways I got interested in this notion of curation. In the Daily Beast, I get all sorts of things where the shortcut, what's it called, Shortcuts in the Daily Beast. I mean, there are places that I get this stuff curated for me.
Where you're moving here is micro-curation. You're moving to the algorithmic curation that based on what you've liked on Facebook and what you've searched for on Google and what you bought on Amazon.com, they'll send you, they're already doing that.
Yeah, but I don't like that. I'm resistant to that. But I love what The Monthly does for me. I love
because it makes you part of the tribe.
It does.
Okay.
Whereas the recommendations on Amazon, you're probably less excited about.
Oh, you know, I once bought a book on a particular kind of dog that my son likes. I can't even remember what it's called. The little one that they have, the little one like a racing, like a greyhound. What's a little greyhound called?
Whippets.
A whippet. I bought a book on whippets from Amazon. Oh, that was the worst thing I ever did. I am now the whippet woman of the world. Anytime anyone publishes anything remotely to do with whippets,
they're the only one who bought that book.
It comes back to what Jim was saying yesterday about niches.
Yeah.
So is it a kind of niche taste? So this is recommended systems and the algorithm. It's all.
That gets some, I was wondering about the question of where is the machine in the rhetoric of curation that's being picked up everywhere. I didn't hear it. So is that the power of using the term curation as opposed to what you use when you say, oh, I'm organizing these. Oh, I think this is awesome. Right? Why not? why not use these other words?
No,
Is it-
because,
is it about human care?
No, it is, and that's exactly the way the word is defined on the internet, that it is more than machine curation. They're invoking people like Weizenbaum. I mean, you know, this is where I began 100 years ago about human reason. I don't know if you've Beyond Human Reason, a book that was written about cybernetics in the 60s, and you know, the software he devised and everything, to warn people about putting too much investment and trust in the machine and the human element that's really important. I think that people are talking about those things again in a new way, and they're talking about these ideas about the relationship between the man and machine in the context of curation, and that's what's really so interesting. So these old ideas are coming up again, and they're really important things to be talking about, but not, and even talking about the old, you know, the old men who wrote about this stuff in the 50s and the 60s.
Could I say one more brief thing about production and curation? Because you mentioned that, you know, there's a shortage of producers. You could characterize it as a shortage anyway.
No, I didn't. I was trying to say something else. I was trying to say that there's a big emphasis in literacy education on being producers, that it's about the doing and about being creative and about that's the way.
Okay,
but I'm saying I think that the evidence is that not that many people
not many
are
people are
producers.
doing it. And so shortage is the wrong word that I pulled out of my lexicon, but that's really not what I meant. I didn't mean any value judgment by it. Just saying that there's just not that many of them as people think. And so that was the thing that we were partly trying to address with this classroom design, was that get Hong Kong students producing about Hong Kong things, right? That there's a dearth of on English Wikipedia. And then we met sort of some resistance saying, you know, basically how teachers shouldn't be doing this sort of thing. The students aren't experts about anything. There seemed to be the implication we should have experts writing these things, sort of privileging the curators. You know, and that's the thing that we butted our heads up against. The students and you know, everybody involved in this was having their articles deleted immediately by these sort of draconian curators who were coming in and saying, "Oh, what a trivial article! I'll delete it." In the Hong Kong context, it was not trivial. And that was the thing that was so offensive about it. And so we had, and then there was an argument, and the good thing about Wikipedia is there's a place to have that debate. But it was interesting that I feel like there's this turnaround going on where rather than privileging the producers, there's this sense that producers should be highly scrutinized, and the curators are not being scrutinized. Who are these people who are making these random, wild decisions about articles on the internet? So I felt, that's
a really important issue.
Guy, did you have a question?
I'm not quite sure it's a question, it's sort of mulling something over. There's something about curation and audience, that particularly in your email reminders from the monthly that you were talking about. And clearly there, that they kind of got the idea of an audience and what the audience appreciates, which is very different from people who read this book like to this. And in a sense, they've got perhaps an educative function. And if you go back to museum and gallery curation, which is your metaphor or your starting point this morning, that's very much got the idea of, well, this is open to the public, but also the public are getting an education by having an insight into Bacon's working methods, for instance. So I'm not quite sure how that extends across, but I think that there's a level of expert knowledge intervening there.
And one of the people that I've read is a woman who is a curator, professionally a curator, and she's been writing a lot about the democratization of the word curator, because as you can imagine, people in galleries, there are some people, professional curators in museums and galleries, who hate the way this word has just been taken up so widely, and they really object to it, and they say that what we do is we've got professional expertise and this word is ours, and nobody else has really got the right to use it. And as a museum expert, she argues against that, and she says that the popularisation of the word is really terrific. And it's getting people to think about to what extent there is some professional expertise and decision making involved in the editing, in the filtering, in the selection, in the organisation and all of those things. So it's kind of opening up these ideas and kind of making them more public and more available, rather than just a privileged few who are the curators of the world.
And that's where it becomes so useful for literacy studies, because
Yeah.
it is about making information accessible, making information searchable, or making information available, or making information relevant, which is a key skill that all of our students have to learn in terms of communication. I mean, it used to be that it wasn't such an important skill because the amount of information they had wasn't that much, and so they just had to organize it a little bit. But now, I mean, that's really what it's all about. How are you going to choose which information is relevant? How are you going to organize it so that your audience is going to be able to search through it in a useful way?
And I think you can turn it around as well and say, who's curated this? So that when you read it, and that might be a good place to start with.
Absolutely.
Pedagogy.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Bill. Go ahead.
No, on this, it seems to me that sometimes it slips into digest, right? When you talk into, which was traditionally, which is, so in a sense, curation may be digest for people who taste.
Yeah.
Because digest.
That's one form of it.
Is it Leavis? I can't remember Leavis or Dwight McDonald or something has a rant against Reader's Digest.
Well, Reader's Digest is used.
Destroying the.
No, but that's
culture.
exactly the example
And
that's used.
so
That's actually the example that's used as the first real example of curation, and they made a bloody fortune out of it, was the Reader's Digest, because that's exactly what it was. It was putting together a whole lot of other people's
But
material.
it was also making it easier and simpler, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
Yes, it is abridging it, yeah.
To be not well curated. Because what the example of curation that comes to my mind is, I don't know if you know it, but there's this series of festival concerts called All Tomorrow's Parties.
Yes,
Which
oh,
is
yes, I do
usually,
know.
I think Nick
That's
Cave.
also a William Gibson book,
I
which is
think
a...
that came through Nick Cave actually is
Yeah.
is usually the curator of that.
Yeah.
But there's a very strong claim there that this is a kind of music that's not pop music, it's not even rock, it's kind of, it is the ultimate in sort of tasteful
And it's curated.
music,
Yeah.
so there's a claim that something that would not normally be part of the sort of museum art culture, by the use of this term creation becomes separated from what maybe it actually is, which is pop music, and becomes something different. So I think that the taste issue is really
Yes, that's a really
crucial.
important, yeah.
Well, that's also coming back to the commodification thing, because there's this celebrity curators, so Yoko Ono doing the Southland Meltdown Festival, it's just a chance for us to hang out with Yoko Ono and bathe in her kind of good taste. And I'm always very cynical about that, to what extent Nick Cave has real choice of anybody he wants, or is he just presented
He's
with
got a
his
Monash doctorate. He was given a Monash doctorate. It's a great example.
I've listened to interviews with people like Jarvis Cocker, who did the Meltdown Festival a couple of years ago, and they're given a very limited range of people who are available on the day, and they just can choose, pick and choose a few things. But so there's that element as well. There's kind of commodification, and it's all bound up with ethics, because you don't go to All Tomorrow's Parties, it's like 150 quid, isn't it? It's,
Oh, I had a question on super vernaculars. Okay, super vernacular is the idea that stuff from English like LOL has gone to German. Yeah, okay. That all seems fine, whether you want to call it a vernacular from a few words going over. But where did what language were Asian emoticons originally related to?
I think it was Japanese.
So they're related to Japanese. They being used is a different direction of movement. Yeah. So they haven't all come from English.
No, it's not.
Okay.
There are things that
It's a
haven't
Japanese
come
thing.
Sorry.
Dan Roberts' idea of super vernacular is that it's come from English. Yeah, he's saying from English in South Africa. In South Africa, non-English speakers were texting. All they were saying was LOL.
It's like a common language.
Does it have the scope to incorporate this can be extended to?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Because the sort of super diversity within education in London is sort of not necessarily driven by England. It's,
Right,
that
yeah,
sort of, so
yeah.
if that has a scope for and different courses, then supervernacular might also have a similar.
I think his idea was also that that's all people were tasting. That they were just, yeah, all they were using were those pre-existing abbreviations.
Somehow it feels like an alternative to NetSpeak.
Another term like this. Yeah. So let's get into Crystal next.
I just found that Crystal statement just unlike what he normally argues, which is language should just be allowed to develop. Isn't that always Crystal's kind of basic argument?
He made lots of predictions that were wrong, I think.
So predictions. So predictions.
He's going to take over the internet. I mean,
Yeah. No, not even, but his, yeah, okay. So I understand what you're saying about his predictions, but his view of language and language development is that it all happens. I think, isn't
I mean,
it?
this desire to kind of label this thing and then, create this lexicon and dictionary and grammar, and then, 5 years later it's gone, basically. And now
I think we heart Crystal.
James, I wanted to say something about curation before that on this issue of the computer-mediated language. There's a linguist in America named John Porter, who's very well known both for his political work and his linguist. And he has a very great TED talk on the grammar of so-called leap speak and what it represents.
Of which speak?
Leaps, or the computer speak stuff, and they're, very different take than Crystal's, I think much more modern. And quite an interesting linguistic analysis as a new form of language that is supplementing other forms of language, not taking anything from and very much expressing linguistic capacities. It's great talk. This creation thing there's a new angle to it, at least in the United States, because in the United States, because publishers have so gouged the colleges and schools, they're now demanding curriculum to be digital, right? So that it's cheaper, they don't have to buy physical books. And that's